Tonight we celebrate a beautiful story about a small group of Blackfeet who worked tirelessly to reintroduce the bison to their ancestral wildland, to bring them home. But for many of our tribal neighbors across the state, far too often they have loved ones who are not coming home. This beautiful state that we call home is one of the most dangerous states in America to live in if you're an Indigenous woman. Per capita, Indigenous people go missing or are murdered at a higher rate than almost any other state. And we're going to talk about that. On stage, I am joined by three extraordinary individuals. Carissa Heavyrunner is an advocate for the missing and murdered Indigenous women movement. And founder of Mika Matters. Carissa's daughter, Mika Westwolf, was murdered over a year ago. Carissa has turned her grief into a powerful campaign to spotlight the violence against Indigenous women and push for justice. Her efforts have garnered national attention and given other grieving families a platform to share their stories. Carissa's relentless advocacy highlights the urgent need for more resources and improved investigations into MMIW cases, showcasing her strength and commitment to protecting Indigenous lives. Ivan MacDonald is an Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and an enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe. His previous project, His previous project includes Murder in Bighorn, which premiered at the 2023 Sundance Film Festival and aired nationally on Showtime. He and his sister Ivy are co-directors of Bring Them Home, and he is currently working on a new documentary called When They Were Here, about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis in Montana. The story is told through the memories of loved ones by three families as they seek justice within an unjust system. And finally, Nic McKinley is a former military special operator and ex-CIA operative with over 30 combat deployments. Nic has leveraged his extensive, thank you for your service. Nic has leveraged his extensive experience to address pressing global issues through technology. In 2014, Nic founded DeliverFund, a nonprofit based in Whitefish, Montana, that provides law enforcement with advanced data and technology to combat human trafficking nationwide. His innovative approach combines his military and intelligence background with a commitment to protecting the most vulnerable from societal predators. Carissa, I would like to start with you, and I would love to learn about your daughter, Mika.
Hello, everyone. My name's Carissa Heavyrunner. I'm an enrolled member of the Blackfeet tribe and also Dene Navajo. My daughter, Mika, she was 22 years old when she was killed in a hit and run last year, March 31st. She grew up in Missoula. We moved over in 2005. I was attending the university with my sister, and I just loved it on this side of the mountains and wanted my daughter to grow up in a place with more opportunities than I received on the Blackfeet tribe. And so she loved it over here. It wasn't too far from home, about a 4-hour drive, and I could just tell that, she loved it over here and she thrived. She played a lot of sports. She was an athlete. She excelled at school. She won Graduation Matters video campaign out of the whole state. And she published poet. She went to Nepal and almost climbed 16,000 feet on the Himalayan mountains over there. She accomplished a lot in her short life. And that's what we had to do, was to share who she was, to humanize her, because that's often a big part where people just read a name, age, and where their tribal affiliation or if they're non-native. And I wanted her to be seen as more than just a name and a statistic. And that's why I wanted people to care about who my girl was, because her life mattered. She had dreams, she had accomplishments, and she was going to do more in this world. And so that's a big part that we've realized being on this side now with our daughter, that how we had to control our daughter's narrative with this whole fight for justice. It is now over a year, as of March 31st, and we just found out that my daughter's case was pushed again. Yesterday would have been the pre-conference trial date, and the trial date would have been September 30th. It is now October 30th, the pre-conference trial, and the trial date is now December 2nd. So this happens a lot with families that are in a situation where I feel it's kind of a stalling, so people can forget about what happened, reading it in the media, seeing it on the news, and I won't let that happen. Me, my husband, and everyone else. Thank you. It has been really hard. That's the other side of this, where we should just be able to grieve as a family, but no, we're up there investigating since day one, meeting with other families and friends that care about this issue, and thinking of other ways how we can create awareness about this missing and murdered Indigenous peoples epidemic, because it is bad. It is really bad now. And I would like to at least make it easier for other families. I pray that they're not in this situation, but where they feel that there is hope, that they can go to trial, that charges can be held against the person, and also that the system will work as it should within these matters. The court system, the law enforcement, the coroners, everyone that's involved. It's always, we're faced with huge obstacles already in the beginning, where we don't, families I spoke to, and you don't feel hope. You have no hope in the beginning, the hands that we've been dealt with all of our lives, our ancestors' lives in the beginning. So imagine having all that behind you and within your family and your community, and we're just, that's the simple message that we send out to try and encourage people to care about this issue is, what if it was your child? What would you do? What would you be willing to do if you felt no one cared? No one wanted to, listen, take your story seriously, or about anyone else involved. So that's been our big thing, is trying to get people to care. And I wouldn't want anyone in this situation, like I've stated before, so that's what we're trying to do, is to create awareness about our daughter, gain support, and to support other families that are in this situation, because allowing them and organizations, events like this, where they can give families a platform to share their truth, share their story, that means so much. And I think that is on the, hopefully on the side to, people caring and creating some real change about this issue. That's what I believe. I know it's hard and it's a sensitive topic, but we have to talk about these things. We have to educate and let people know that care, how they can help, how you can support families that are in this situation, how you can support even if you're a non-native. It's just about humanity. That's what it is. It's just caring. And so that's what we've been doing with the Mika Matters. Being part of events where we were trying to plan them in the beginning, and now we're asked to be part of events. That's, I'm so thankful. That's how hard we've worked, to where other people are caring about this issue, and they're doing art gallery events, or they're having a MMIP panel, and there's other things that people can be part of. Like, we just did the rodeo opening for the Western Montana Fair this year again in Missoula. And that's a huge platform that the Fairgrounds Committee, Jeanette Rankin Peace Center has given Micah Matters. And we had other families that were there that carried the flags. It was all women. They wore ribbon skirts. They all were mothers or relatives that has lost someone to the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples epidemic and received no justice. And that's who all carried in the flags, and that's who all stood with me when I spoke and I updated people about my daughter Micah's case. And we, to me, that was healing. And I imagine for the other families too, that, there's a crowd that's here and they listen and they cared and they supported. And to me, that's what I want to do, is help other people that are in a situation, give them a platform where they can share their story and their truth, because I believe that's the only way you can truly heal and move on, or at least to be seen and heard, and for other people to try to understand and hopefully not be in this situation, but just to care about this issue.
Yeah.
Ivan, how has being a filmmaker, how did you approach Murder in Bighorn, and what did you learn from that, especially as a filmmaker, making that story?
Yeah, my sister and Ivy and I were intimately involved in not only the creation of that series, but the development, and it kind of had built upon a lot of the work we had been doing up to that point. My sister and I started documenting kind of the beginnings in Montana of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis back about maybe 2015 or 2016, just documenting our own family story, but then communities and people around us. And that series takes place on the Crow and Northern Cheyenne reservations. And I had worked as a clinical therapist on the Crow, at the Crow Indian Health Service, and working through that series, there was so many similarities to what we were seeing in Blackfeet country. And actually one of the big kind of pushes for our involvement of that in that series was kind of by referral from families and working with those families on a larger scale. I help run we award funds through the Snowbird Fund, which is based under the Montana Community Foundation in Helena, and we've awarded or redistributed upwards of $90,000 to families searching for their missing loved ones around Montana. And my sister and I were just documenting a search of a family who's searching for their loved one on the Blackfeet Reservation just this past weekend. And I think what was really kind of struck me and was something that I maybe didn't anticipate was just how many stories there are. Murder in Bighorn only covers 4. My sister and I's documentary, when they were here, covers 2, possibly 3. And the MMIP group on the Blackfeet Reservation has 70 documented cases. And that's a small community. There's about 1,100, 1,200 of us who Blackfeet tribal members who actually live on the reservation. And so, I'm always kind of struck by just how many stories there are, how many families are searching for justice, and kind of what Carissa was saying, where oftentimes it is families doing this work on their own. Like, the genesis for our story was our cousin Monica Wells Still Smoking, who was kidnapped and murdered on the reservation at the age of 7. And for 40 years, my uncle never found justice. And so that was kind of a big push for our story. And I think that was similar with Murder in Bighorn. And I also think the success of Murder in Bighorn and the platform that Showtime provided it, where there was millions of viewers, I think hopefully helped at least with some minor level of awareness. And I think that when Ivy and I started this work, we were we kind of asked ourselves, what is the best, what can we provide to this movement? And it started out of just documenting stories. And so we would just go into communities, listen to people, listen to families, and that's kind of the jumping off point of our work, where we've probably have documented maybe only about 20 stories, but there's hundreds, possibly thousands in the state. And so that's just kind of our work moving forward, where we kind of hope to give families a platform to share their story. And, kind of what Carissa was saying, the work really started out in trying to humanize the stories of these women. And, I think projects like Murder in Bighorn really help with that, because they put a human face on this crisis that you may hear in passing on the news. And, Murder in Bighorn followed a 14-year-old, a 16-year-old. One of the women in the stories, Sarah Stops Pretty Places, there was just charges filed against the person who they think led to her death. And so, the family was really ecstatic about that. And I think it's just, above all, I think it just made me realize how many stories there are, and how many stories, will be told and how many stories won't.
Nic, how do we zoom out and look at this from the big picture? Because you've obviously seen similar cases in overseas and stuff, and there's we're kind of looking at this, the very cute photo, like from the families. Like, from your perspective, what is the bigger picture here on what is possibly happening with this system?
Well, thanks, Morgan, and thanks for putting this all together and just highlighting this. This was all Morgan's idea, and of course, we're happy to support it. And I think it really comes down to two things. There was something said backstage, and I'm a local guy, so there's probably a lot of you that I recognize and know, but all I see, thanks to the lights, is just bobbleheads. So the thing that was said backstage was, wow, 600 tickets sold? I didn't think anybody in Kalispell cared. Let that sit. So what does that say about our neighbors, brothers and sisters, fellow Montanans, fellow Americans, and the way that they feel that our lack of visibility, or really our lack of seeing, or their lack of visibility, however you want to put it. But another thing I want you to consider is that our Native brothers and sisters in Montana are 6.7% of the population, state of Montana, less than 10%. Yet they account for 26% of the missing person cases in the state of Montana. If this was happening to middle-class white girls at the same rate, this would be a national emergency that would have all hands on deck and unlimited funding. But because it's only 6.7% of what is a traditionally marginalized population, instead, what we see is Montana has a MMIW task force, right? That task force hasn't had a meeting since last summer. But the good news is that the state legislature reauthorized the task force for 10 years. All right, politicians, good job. The bad news, before you clap, because again, politicians, and this issue, by the way, rests at the feet of our politicians. The bad news is, to zoom out a little bit, that task force had asked for a budget for the next 2 years of $50,000. You can't hire a janitor for 2 years for $50,000, much less a professional to focus on this issue full time. And that's the budget that they put forward. Should have been $500,000 or more, but instead they put forward $50,000. And somebody on the Ways and Means Committee in our Montana legislature, who's local to this area, cut it to $5,000 for the next 2 years. And the reason that she said that she did that was because they had $18,000 left from the previous funding. Because only the government, after 17 and a half years in the federal government, I can tell you, only the government is going to actually punish you for not spending all of your money. And so, why did they have $18,000 left? Because what can you do with $18,000? You literally cannot start a login cybersecurity protected website and run it for 2 years for $18,000. So now the task force, which was criminally underfunded, is now even more criminally underfunded. So that's the issue we're looking at. And so why do we have this problem in the state of Montana? Well, it's pretty linearly predictable. There isn't enough funding, and the reason there isn't enough funding is because our politicians don't care enough. And so if you're sitting in this audience and you're a politician, I hope you're getting really, really uncomfortable. Reach out. We'll try to help you with solutions. If you are sitting in this office and you are politically connected, I want you to run an experiment. I want you to go to the person you know who is that elected politician, and I want you to say, hey, human trafficking, MMIW, tell me, is this important? And you'll see lots of wringing of hands and mashing of teeth and talking about how it's the most important issue and they're dedicated to the fight and all these things. Very next question that you should ask them should be, that's great. Please give me a copy of the legislation that you have put forward and show me the budget line item that properly funds this fight. Because we spend, as a country, double-digit billions fighting the war on drugs. How's that going? 90% of drugs are legal. We spend billions of dollars fighting what is the illicit sale of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Some of you ranchers in here probably have alcohol, tobacco, and firearms on your person right now. Right? One of those is a constitutionally protected right, and we spend billions of dollars fighting it, yet in the state of Montana, we're willing to put a grand total of $23,000 towards fighting this issue for a 2-year period. It's criminal. That's why things are getting as bad as they are, and until we fix that problem, we're really not going to make much progress.
Amazing point. Carissa, I'm curious to hear, what was your experience with the justice system from investigators, sheriffs? How was your case treated?
It took almost a month for me and my husband to get a hold of the lead investigator of the Montana Highway Patrol. We gave him our cell numbers, we called from our phones, left messages, nothing. And then we borrowed a friend's cell phone and called him, and he answered. So it's things like that, and the continuous asking of if I had legal counsel before he came to our house to do a small, discussion. He asked like 4 times and wanted to make sure I had no legal counsel, didn't talk to anybody. And then he came right over to our house and met with me, my husband, and our MMIW advocate, Erica Shelby. And we had questions for him already on our laptop, and we had already some of our friends went to local businesses throughout Arley requesting video footage through the town of Arley to see when the woman's vehicle drove through town that hit our daughter, and requested that they wouldn't give that to anyone without a warrant. And, because that is time-sensitive material. And so when we brought that to the lead investigator's attention, he asked, why? Why did you request video footage? What are you expecting to see on there? And it was crazy. We had to, answer these things, these simple questions that he had no idea why we were requesting that, kind of trying to make us feel like we're dumb. And he was very condescending from the get. When he walked into our house, he said, "None of you guys are under arrested." And we just looked at each other, looked at like, oh, okay, thanks. We didn't think we were, but like treating us like we're criminals and trying to like get a aggressive response from us, like baiting. You could tell, like asking more than once. Do you need me to get up and leave? Or asking me if I wanted my husband and our legal advocate in the room with us when I already asked him if it was okay, and like wanting me to change my mind, or even asking my husband, are you okay? You look like something's bugging you in there. Just, just like how my husband said, he checked off these signs. He checked off this list of how to be, and it was strategic. And looking back on that now, we see this is what families are up against. Just the repeating when my husband asked him, why isn't this woman in jail that hit our daughter? Why is she released? And he just kept repeating that in the state of Montana, it's illegal to be intoxicated walking on the side of the road. He just repeated that 5 times. Wouldn't even consider putting himself in our shoes for not even a second. When my husband said, what if this was your daughter? What would you do? Wouldn't you be doing what we're doing, trying to investigate, gather evidence? And we're trying to help you, what we found out about this person. And he just said, I can't look at, when the names of her children were mentioned, which we found on because there was an Amber Alert issued for this woman, kidnapped her children. That's how we found out about her name. She had 2 children named Arian and Nation. And he didn't even want to consider looking into this as a possibility, as a possible hate crime. And, these were just simple facts that we found out on our own, and trying to look into a jail roster and see who is charged for hitting and killing our daughter. And there was nobody. And so we knew that this is what we were up against. That's why we had to take control of our daughter's narrative. We had to show who she was, that she was someone that mattered. She had so much to live for, and we weren't going to let him victim blame, and that's what he was trying to do by just repeating that same thing 5 times and not even considering, when my husband said, what if this was your child? What would you do? Oh, I can't even imagine that. I can't even think about that. And then when he mentioned the names that we found out, oh, I shouldn't look at it as that. I shouldn't even consider. I need to look at everything else. And so that was the first and the last time we met with him. Not by our choice. He never reached out again. He never... Nothing, but he took our daughter's cell phone too, wanted her cell phone when she didn't even have it on her at the time of the accident. That to me, it was part of the victim blaming. And that's the way he was describing it was, oh, we need to look at every possibility. We need to see if she was, depressed, or if she was, this is how he was, and he just wanted her cell phone so bad. And at that time, I wish I didn't give it to him, but you're thinking of anything that to help your child's case. So I gave it to him. I gave him the code. But when he came there in that first encounter, he brought the phone. See, he got the phone the very next day, April 1st. We saw him down at the road marker, and they were investigating, and that's when he wanted her phone, and he followed us home to get it. But when he came to our house, and that's when he asked, he must have lost the code I gave him, and he asked me to let him on my daughter's phone, and he would take pictures of whatever he needed, and I could have the phone. When I didn't agree to that, and I changed my mind, and I said, no, not without an attorney. His attitude instantly changed. He got mad, and he ripped off the red tape on that an evidence bag, threw it in there, and said, well, now you're going to have to go through judge and warrants to even get your daughter's phone back, like trying to make me feel bad. But I know my rights. And he wanted to speak to our son, not without an attorney, and so he left mad. He left mad and just a mess. He couldn't even get out of our driveway. That's how mad he was. That he came to our house and expected to bully us and treat us this way and leave with whatever, and he didn't. He didn't succeed. We didn't let him. We were no dummies. And so that's where it's very frustrating and heartbreaking that these, almost every other family, like Ivan said, that we spoke to, this is the hands that they're dealt. This is the treatment. One of the mothers, we brought attention to her on the walk. She was waiting patiently for law enforcement to come contact her, and finally she couldn't stand it. 2 weeks later, went down to the office, and the lead investigators shaming her, saying it took, what kind of mother takes 2 weeks to come down here and ask about her child? I mean, things like that. And this is the same lead investigator as my daughter's case. That's why we had to do a 4-day awareness walk and include these other families that received no justice. Now it's 2 years, 3 years for a couple of these families, these mothers that had to deal with the same kind of treatment. And I wanted them to be a part of this walk where we stopped at each one of the accident sites for their child, and where they could share and tell their truth, how they were treated, what happened, and to me that's what they needed. They just needed to know that there was people that cared, that were on this walk and that were listening, and they got to share their experience. And that's what I wanted for them, and that's what we're trying to help with. Like I said, how can you heal and move on if you can't even share your truth? No one cares to listen. You know, it's a big, hard thing. So that's what, trying to include other family members that are affected by this, trying to give them a voice and a chance to where they can share their truth and still, you know, you never know what can happen. Guilt is a powerful thing. That's why I'm very encouraging and hopeful that them keeping their child's name out there. Never know what can happen. And to not give up. If anything, I see that they've been doing this for years, and I just now hit the 1-year mark. I encourage them to not give up. I'll be there to help any other families in any way possible, educating people about this issue. We just had our first public discussion in Missoula after the fair on the 8th. And that's going to be the first of a series where it's open to the public. And it's just casual conversation where in a couple-minute talk or that we do at an event, it's hard to squeeze all these factors in, why this issue is growing, why it is the way it is. And so that's what we want to do, is answer, you know, no question's a bad question. It's just learning how, you know, you can word it a certain way, but I'm willing to educate and explain why I think this is the way it is and why it's important that we have an opportunity. With my daughter's case, the media is going to be there during the trial. That's how hard we worked our butts off for the media to be there, and we used the media to put pressure on Lake County, the system, to do their jobs, to investigate, to do what they should have done in the beginning. And they need to be held accountable to do their jobs that they're supposed to do, and also the people that commit these crimes. They need to be held accountable. So that's what, like I said, the trial's been pushed, but I encourage and ask anyone for support. You can visit MikaMatters.com, MIKA, And Micah Matters, we called it that, meaning her life matters. Everyone's life matters. They matter to someone. They're someone's child, cousin, sister, brother. And now it's not just affecting women, it's men as well. So this is, now a new thing we call it is the MMIR, which is relatives. Because in Indian country, it's someone's relation that has went, and just caring, like I said, about humanity, about this issue, and creating awareness, educating, and just keeping my daughter's name out there and her story, and trying to help with other families, supporting them with what they're doing, and that's what my goal is, to continue doing. And like I said, support when it does come to trial. It's open to anybody. That's a little tiny courthouse, but you can support in other ways. You can bring a chair. You can wear a red shirt. You can wear a red Micah Matter shirt. You can just attend events like this. You can share videos, media, news clip, anything about my daughter's case or any other events that are, pertaining to missing, murder, Indigenous peoples, sharing those things on social media, that helps too. Because that's the big question that we always get asked is how? What can I do? How can I help? I'm not, and that's why I'm like, it doesn't matter. It just matters that you care about humanity, you care about these issues, you care about our youth's lives, our future. And so that's all we're asking is support, if you can. Support, educate someone else that doesn't know what MMIW, MMIR is. Supporting these events, walks, they're usually open to the public. There's no discrepancy. And we do have another one that's coming up November. It's called Indigenizing the Zac in Missoula. And I do plan to do a one-day walk, probably from the grocery store to the courthouse in Polson, either next month or the following month after that. I know I'm planning to do that, and I usually post those on the Micah Matters website and the Instagram and Facebook Micah Matters pages. So if anyone's interested in helping support in that way, really appreciate it. And these kind of platforms mean so much. Like I said, thank you so much, Morgan. Just to be able to share my story and what we face as Indigenous families with this missing, murder, Indigenous peoples epidemic. And thank you guys for being here today to listen and take some time to learn about these issues. It means a lot.
Ivan, I'm just now even more excited to watch your new movie when it comes out and you're working on it. Can you tell us more about when they were here? And how is this different from Murder in Bighorn?
Yeah, Murder in Bighorn was much more of a kind of a classical true crime story. It examined 4 cases. It looked at 2 in particular in depth, Sarah Stops Pretty Places and Selena Not Afraid. Both people who died near Billings and the Crow Reservation. And that film is kind of this, or that series was kind of this real deep dive into the political factors, the legal factors, the cultural factors, and kind of a lot of these, I think people can kind of think of it as just, it's one thing that is causing this issue when it's a gamut, it's a foundation. It's how reservations were structured, it's how jurisdiction works in Indigenous communities, and it's this gamut of factors that kind of make it up. And I think that series, for people who may not know, gives a really great primer on what this topic is and how does it manifest in Indigenous communities. And when they were here, the project, my sister and I have been working on our longest project since about 2016, and it will air nationally on PBS upon completion, hopefully in the next year or 2. And that project is a lot more of a personal story. It deals specifically with our community, the Blackfeet community, and it's just this examination of the historical place, our people, our community, the creation of the reservation system. It touches on the history of state-sanctioned violence in the community, such as the Marias Massacre, which happened with the United States government, Starvation Winter, where a group of Blackfeet were deliberately starved by the United States government, and kind of touches on all of these kind of historical events. And it covers our cousin Monica's story, which I'd mentioned, but also our cousin Ashley Loring Heavyrunner, who went missing actually when we were starting production on the film. And it just touches on how Blackfeet people heal, how we remember our loved ones. It's a bit more, we kind of call it, there's parts of it that's like a classical criminal investigation, but we also call it kind of a spiritual investigation, like what is the spiritual loss that our community goes through when these cases happen. And yeah, that will hopefully be out probably another year or two, which, yeah, hopefully can bring it back here and show it to the community as well.
Oh, amazing. Can you imagine, they're saying like, my cousin, my sister, my daughter, if like every family you knew had someone that happened to, it's, as Nic said, this would be a national emergency. So Nic, how do we, from your perspective, we've talked about the political system is broken, it's not going to fix it. The justice system on all levels is not really fixing it. So it's really kind of like a ground roots, is the ground roots the way to solve it? And like, how can an organization like DeliverFund potentially help out in something like this? How do we help us non-tribal people?
Sure. So I think the first is, right, we have a tribal population, we have a native population, but they're just our fellow Montanans, our fellow Americans. No different, right? Just live on a different chunk of the state of Montana, different soil, right? But still like our brothers and sisters in humanity. So I think that's like the messaging is really important. And I think that's key to it. We keep talking about missing. What does that mean? Well, when you talk to the state will brag that they have a 99% clearance rate on these missing cases. Sounds pretty good, right? What they don't tell you is that when they find the body of the murdered woman, that turns into a clearance of a missing person case. The clearance of the homicide case, abysmal, criminal, like virtually non-existent. So let me give you some stats on this. Obviously, my passion is fighting human trafficking, using technical means, using data and analytics to do that. May have stole some counterterrorism methodologies from the CIA and learned how to do that, and just pointing it to a different solution. We have the largest, thanks to the generosity of our donors, we have the largest and cleanest human trafficking database on the planet. And that's not as much of a feather in our cap as it is an indictment of the system, but it's a different conversation in a different panel. So I had one of my data engineers pull some data from our billions of data points. And just since January 1st of this year, in commercial sex advertisements, which, contrary to popular belief, is not primarily prostitution, it's over 80% human trafficking, right? It's not, like the Pareto distribution is the opposite of what people think. Native, as being advertised, is mentioned 10,741 unique times. Native American, 4,000 times uniquely. That doesn't include the continual posting. Indian, which obviously could mean, right, it could be in Sikh, Hindu, it could be from India, right, but 13,962 times. Indigenous, as in there are people, primarily human traffickers, who are advertising for, hey, would you like to spend some time with somebody who is indigenous? 329 times. So if I can collect that data, and I know that, then why doesn't the state know it? Why don't our politicians know it? And one thing I'll tell you after working at those levels of the federal government for 17 and a half years is that the government is just not that competent, and it's not your answer. We, the people, are the government, and we are the answer. And so how do we solve this problem? Well, you look at the HT side as an example. We empower the tribes, and this is where the tribes have to be the lead, and they have to Like we have to empower them. We have to support them, not be the ones trying to take ownership of the problem. There are technical and AI solutions that exist today that were we to implement in one tribe and hire one person to run that, that's it. I'm telling you that we would solve that problem for that tribe inside of 18 months. Cost is $175,000. If anybody wants to call my bluff on that, I'm happy to prove it. We are in actually a time where data and AI can solve so many problems. And when I'm talking AI, a lot of people think that, oh, well, AI is for getting on ChatGPT or Midjourney and, making a picture of my cat on the moon. No, that's consumer facing, right? That's not what it's for. What it's for is to help find signal in immense amounts of data. And so we've shown with our technical platforms, just to kind of put some parentheses around this, that our technical platforms can actually accomplish what would take 200 law enforcement officers, each working 2,000 hours apiece. We can accomplish that in 30 minutes thanks to some really cool tech. And so I think that's the beginning. It is not the solution for this, because all those numbers that I read, why are there advertisements for what is essentially an illicit product on a black market? It's because there's a demand. And so that's one of the things that we as a culture really have to wrap our minds around, is how are we going to solve that, which is really the underlying issue. But on a higher level, just something as simple as putting the right technology and the right people actually focusing on this issue, and the state's not going to do it, and the federal government's not going to do it. So we, the people, have to empower our brothers and sisters to be able to do it for themselves.
Amazing. Well, we have just scratched the surface on this important issue that is affecting our fellow Montanans here. Unfortunately, we're going to have to conclude it, but intermission, and after the show, everyone will be in the lobby, so please come up, talk to us. Let's keep this conversation going. Hopefully, this is the first of many, many more amazing conversations we'll have with everyone up here and with all of you amazing people who came here tonight. So thank you all again for coming. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and then we have an amazing performance by Superman, who's Montana native from the Crow Agency. He embodies unity and coming together to just be one and really promoting humanity through hip-hop and utilizing amazing Native American instruments. It's going to be an amazing performance, so definitely stick around. He's going to be right up. And then after that, it's going to be a 15-minute intermission. You can go use the bathroom, get a beverage, enjoy yourself, and then we will premiere Bring Them Home. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.